All right. Kosuke here. I'm the creator of Jenkins and CTO of CloudBees. And I guess I have a message for my fellow Jenkins contributors. It's a pitch of a sort. Now, if I look at Jenkins today, first of all, thanks to you all, Jenkins has been this amazing success, right? We really knocked the ball out of the park. In part thanks to the extensibility. We built this community of people where we can build our own things, scratch our own itch, build on top of some other people's, and then the itch that they scratched, and then collectively push the envelope in all sorts of different directions, the technology-wise and community-wise. Our success is also in part of the fact that Jenkins is a very general purpose engine, which reflects the reality of the software development, right? Everyone develops all kinds of different software at the different, the technology domain, etc. So our having this general purpose engine that pieces can be added on top to make it really useful for all sorts of different software has been incredible success. And of course, the community is really the source of all the powers. We have people doing different experiments, building other things, and sharing the labor and sharing the fruits with other people so that collectively we can make other people productive. And then around this open source, this idea that the more eyeballs should help and all that stuff. So the way we set up this project and the community is that each of us, every contributor gets his or her own little space. Usually think of this as a plugin. And then we all work autonomously and individually. And in this way, collectively, we were able to fill a big space in rapid period of time. And then, perhaps because we've been so good at that, and then we've been so successful. Now, the challenge is that we are unable to join hands to solve the bigger problem that goes beyond the size of the single tile. And over the 10 years, and again, in part because we've been so successful in solving these problems that these tiles could fill, the fact that we were unable to solve these other bigger structural problems are getting more pronounced. I think it's time that we need to work on these problems. Look at a little differently. It's a little bit like we are stuck in this local optimum, right? The way we lay out the technological foundation and the plugin and the community and culture around it is making it difficult to us structurally to solve the certain kind of problems. So we need to get out of this local optimum. It's a very dangerous place to be in. So what are those problems that we've been unable to solve in the current setup? And I'm sure you'll recognize many of those. Because as the Jenkins gets more mission critical, as the continuous delivery becomes more widespread, the expectation that the people have on Jenkins, the workload that they put on Jenkins, all that has been changing quite a lot over the life of this project. So I think one of the major problems that a lot of people struggle with is the fact that the failure in Jenkins is not contained. So if something takes down the master, then it takes down the entire thing, and the work stops. And then in the mission critical system, that is not acceptable. So we want to build a system that has no single point of failure, one that does not require restart for upgrading or some key changes. We should be able to, there are software who can do these things. Jenkins is not there. Another class of problem I call the brittleness of the configurations. Many Jenkins admins must have felt once or more that they were unable to make changes into Jenkins with confidence, often described as a snowflake, right? Instead, what we want people to allow is to be able to make configuration changes with high level of confidence, be able to roll out those changes over a period of time safely. And then in case something goes bad, they should be able to back out those changes without significantly impacting the overall operation of the system. Installing and updating plugins and Jenkins core is probably an important subset of this problem worth mentioning, because I think that's the one in which many people feel this fear, or they feel scary to do these things. And it leads to some of the other problems that I'm going to talk later. Another problem I've been pitching a lot lately is this feeling of assembly required. We want to build Jenkins that works out of the box, that has the batteries included, makes people productive within 5 clicks and 5 minutes, like I've described in the Jenkins World Contributor Summit last year, instead of making people feel like Jenkins is an IKEA furniture that requires assembly. We want to guide people toward the so-called lead path, one that makes people productive, and help them feel confident in making these things, as opposed to this wild wide west of feeling like I need to assemble my own things, and then I'm never certain, fully confident that I did it the right way. And then, because in a way, because the continuous delivery is again becoming so mission critical, and we, the Jenkins project, can make such a big impact to the users. In order to do so much more, we cannot avoid talking about the slow development velocity problems. I think anyone of us who's been working on core for long enough must have felt at some point that the changes across multiple plugins are harder than it should be, in part because of the tooling. We have all these plugins, each separate in different repositories, but also it's in part because of the culture, because we encourage everyone to be their own kings of their plugins. We also know that the often tests do not give us enough confidence to feel that the change is good. And then I think we tried to compensate for that, or we ended up compensating for that by slowing down the pace of the changes, making code reviews harder and longer. We also have various Jenkins seasons in the code base or the way we roll that discourages new contributors. And these things are creating vicious cycles, right? Whenever the users get burned by a change that blows up in their face, their reaction is to slow down the pace of accepting the changes, reducing the pace of upgrades, be really careful, that sort of things. And then existing contributors get frustrated because they are the one that's on the hook to clean up the mess when the change blows up. When those changes are finally used by the users, which takes longer. And by that point, the contributors who made the change is already gone. And the people who are making these changes, the new contributors to the project, feel frustrated because their small and seemingly reasonable changes are taking much longer and much hassle to get through. They have to go through so many hoops. And that's demonstrably been discouraging further participation to the project. So I say it's time that we take on these big challenges head on. And Krabby's wants to put the money where the mouth is. Right? We are staffing the efforts to solve these problems. We have some ideas, but we alone cannot do this. This is an open source project, and we need your participation, feedback, the guidance, and collaboration to move this forward. So the way I see it, I think we are looking at 2 major initiatives. One that I call the Cloud Native Jenkins. The other is to insert the Jolt into the Jenkins. So we put succinctly, Cloud Native Jenkins is about getting the general purpose CI/CD engine that runs on top of the Kubernetes, which embraces fundamentally different software architecture, not the one that's based on like a single JVM thing based on the Java app server. And then the wholly different extensibility mechanism, again, not the one that's based on the in-process Java, like method call kind of thing. So I think we've been having conversation over things like that in the past. And I think at this point, what are the key ingredients in Cloud Native Jenkins? I think that's pretty clear. Right? One of them is clearly to embrace Kubernetes as a platform. Just like when Java used to be the winning server application platform, Kubernetes is emerging as a clear winner of a platform to write the modern applications, like Jenkins should be. And we want to embrace the paradigm that this new platform encourages, things like the serverless, functional service style build executions, or the fact that it's splitting various pieces of functionality into smaller services that communicate and collaborate through the Kubernetes CRDs. Extensibility mechanism needs to evolve not just about the Java in-process thing, but about the way people are doing these things today. For example, Docker container as the unit of extensibility, which Jesse has explained, the experiment in the past. Pipeline shared libraries is another example of extensibility that's not based on, not based on plugins. And those are it has the right potential to flourish as a full-blown ecosystem. We need to move the data of the we need to move the data of the file system into the cloud-managed data services, like applications today are doing. Configuration as code needs to play a bigger role. This has been very well received, rightly so, as a way of solving some of these brittleness problems that I described earlier. Evergreen is another well-received effort that's already underway, and it aims to solve the developer velocity problems and some parts of the brittleness problem as well. And I truly believe that it's a key piece of the puzzle that allows this to move faster. And then lastly but not least, Jenkins, cloud-native Jenkins should be secure by design. Instead of assuring the security through the hard work and fixing problem one at a time, we should be designing things so that eliminate certain class of vulnerabilities altogether. Those are all key parts of the cloud-native Jenkins. And on top of these key ingredients, we need to add all the good things of Jenkins that we've been already pushing for. Right? The great onboarding experience that we've been pursuing, modern lovable UX, and then above all, perhaps the main being a general purpose engine that's usable for any kind of software development. And I think this is the mission for the cloud native SIG, which is the special interest group that's been going on for a while. Some of this work has been already happening under the leadership of the Carlos Sanchez. And I also think of this effort as following the footsteps of the Jenkins X, another project that's been very widely received within the Jenkins project. I think Jenkins X represents a certain kind of use cases, the user mindset that the Jenkins, because we are in this local Optimum, we're not able to meet very well. So one way to look at the cloud native Jenkins is that it's a way of morphing Jenkins into a shape that works better and great in the kind of situation that the Jenkins X needs to use, and then thereby, and then generalize that idea. So in this way, we can converge the Jenkins X and Jenkins a lot more closely so that each leverage each other. So the first step of the cloud native Jenkins, its MVP, I think is closer than you might think, because as I said, all these efforts, number of these efforts are already well in progress. So if you mentally picture something like, a distributed application that's running on top of Kubernetes, where one component receives the webhooks from a place like GitHub or Bitbucket, and then there's, it queues up the work, and then there's a serverless, Jenkins as a function kind of build runner coming in, something around the Jenkins file runner, which is an experiment that Nicola and I have done some time ago. And then, sprinkle a little bit of configurations code to control the state of the plugins and the Jenkins setup in that settings. And then if the whole thing is packaged evergreen so that it's continuously delivered, so that the development of this cloud native Jenkins leverage from the development boost, velocity boost that evergreen brings, then I think we're already pretty much looking at the viable MVP of cloud native Jenkins that's incredibly useful for quite a number of people. A part of the puzzle that makes us get to this MVP close enough is by boldly cutting some things out of the scope, at least from the MVP, right? Such as no GUI, no long-term data storage. And of course, these things need to be added back as we move forward past the MVP. But I think by cutting these things out, at least initially, we can get to show some real useful thing for many users. And I think that's incredibly exciting. So, the cloud native Jenkins, as you saw, only works with certain limited subset, and it also targets the platform that's not yet widely available. So in order to provide a cover, we also need to continue the incremental evolutionary path of Jenkins too, but we cannot be doing things the way we've been always doing. This is the place we also need to inject a jolt. in order to get us out of the local optimum. We need to both achieve better speed of development and better stability, not one instead of the other, or not one over the other. And in my mind, that means we need to renegotiate contract with the users. We need to change the expectation that the user has around the way the Jenkins has been delivering, good or bad. I think we need to move away from this forever compatibility requirement that's been making the development so much slower. My inspiration is we need to embrace certain kind of release model change, such as the one that the Java C team went through, where they were able to they sort of gave up some of the, I guess, the backward compatibility. Well, they gave up some of the emphasis to the backward compatibility, and then instead they seem to have gained a lot of the velocity of adding new features. I think we need a similar thing, and if that leads to a release model change, I think we should be all open to that. I firmly believe that the continuous delivery of Jenkins is another key puzzle to get the velocity and the stability at the same time. And of all the open source projects out there, I think ours should be the one that believe in the value and the power of the continuous delivery. Because after all, that's what we preach. So we should be walking the walk. We should be practicing what we preach ourselves. And when we talk about, fixing these long-standing pain or renegotiating contracts with the users, I'm sure you have lots of your own pet peeves and ideas about how to do things. I'd love to hear those. But let's also remember that at the end of the day, whatever we do has to make sense to the users as a collective trade-off. Right? We can ask them to take on some inconveniences only in exchange of the compelling value, like the better speed of development and better stability. So in my mind, what that means is we need to be largely compatible, if not completely compatible. We need to be able to serve people's workload as they have today. So again, we have some specific ideas, the project and initiatives that we think is going to help us move into that directions. We obviously haven't figured all these things out, but we think these are the key ingredients. I talked about Evergreen and configurations code already. There's another effort that's being looked into, which is the continued evolution of pipeline execution engine. And some of the changes being thought about in there is a lot more than evolutionary. I think you also need to look at the developer experiences. Sorry, not only I think, Cloudbees think we need to look at the developer experiences and onboarding experience improvements of Jenkins. So these are things that make Jenkins easier to use for the people, makes them productive right away. I think we also need to do something about the plugins, right? I think we need to actively guide users more toward the sweet spot of Jenkins, as opposed to leaving people in the wild, wide west of everyone for their own survival. And in that way, I think we need to reduce our feature surface area. We need to focus our contributors' effort to the important parts of Jenkins, and thereby making those important parts that everyone uses better. I think in the similar vein, we're going to look into the table stake service integrations, GitHub, Slack, whatever these services that everyone uses. I think the level of the polish we have, the level of ease of use we have on those is not on par. They need to be great instead of just being good. So those are some of the key ideas and behind the jolt in Jenkins. And then to wrap it up, we as a Jenkins project, I think we have to move away from the local optimum. And we need to, in order to do that, we need to change. We need to question the way we do things. And then we need to shake things up a little. And this time, I'm not just saying things. Money is where the mouth is. We are willing to Cloudbees, as a CTO of Cloudbees, we are putting the money where our mouth is. And then in order to achieve that, I see two initiatives in front of us, and I explain those in broad strokes. Obviously, lots of details needs to be filled out. And unfortunately, we know how to do those things in the Jenkins project. Those conversations will happen in coming days in special interest groups and JEPs. We are looking forward from hearing from you. I believe in collective eyeballs making things better. So, and I'm firmly convinced that many of you also share the same goals that I'm laying out here. So looking forward to join hands with you guys. If you feel like this is a worthy cause to get behind, please step up and raise your hands, and we'll work together so that we can push this ball forward faster. All right.